Hello again, everyone. My name is Martin Lehner from Orange Technology, and in this video, I want to talk about being a firefighter. Figuratively, not literally. Not literally. Firefighting seems like a great career. For those of you who are interested in that, absolutely, absolutely. There's a good career to be made there. Not for me personally. Very much respect firefighters though. So if you are a firefighter, that is awesome. If you want to become one, also awesome. A lot of firefighting is volunteer actually, which is even more respectable. But that's not what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is being a firefighter in the technology industry. So this is something that's been bothering me for many years, right? So for those of you who don't know from my previous videos, I am an MSP, so I'm a managed services provider. For those of you in the U.S., for those of you outside of the U.S., the term IT services provider is still widely used. My company is Orange Technology, as you can see here, and we are, basically an MSP slash IT services provider. We administer networks, we manage networks. Everything from security to servers to firewalls to workstations, network printers, all that kind of stuff, right? We also do IP phone systems, so we do IP telephony. We do mobile integration, all that kind of stuff, right? Basically a one-stop technology solutions provider. And we've been operating for 6 years, okay? So we've been operating since 2010. Started with one client, of course, like everybody, and have grown. We acquired our largest competitor a year ago, almost to the day. It was in July of 2015. We acquired our largest competitor in our operating area, who was it was our largest competitor, but it was the largest IT services provider in my area. So for those of you who don't know, I live in Whitehorse in the Yukon. So that's in northern Canada. It's basically on the Canadian side of Alaska. So we're basically on the Canadian side of Alaska. I live in Whitehorse, like I said. That's the capital city here in the Yukon. Population is just under 30,000. So no, not really that big, but we are a capital city. So we have all of our services here. Basically every business is here, head offices, that kind of thing. So so about a year ago, we acquired our largest competitor. Almost half a year ago, we acquired a smaller niche competitor who focused really on the medical and dental fields. They basically had all of the medical and dental clients in the area here, so we acquired them. And we've grown. I mean, we've grown organically as well. I have 2 office locations, number of staff, 9 staff in total. So, we are we're not a one-man show. Okay, so we are not a one-man show. We have quite a few clients. We administer quite a few networks. We do residential drop-off. We do residential house calls, all of that kind of stuff. And so my experience in this industry, I know other technology professionals locally, nationally. I know of a few that are operating in the U.S. That I chat with regularly. And what I have noticed is that the majority of technology professionals, whether they are consultants, whether they are an MSP slash IT services provider, or whether they are on-premise employees of a company or a government or a group or an organization, whatever, what I've seen is that everybody acts like a firefighter. Okay. I will take one example of an organization that I worked with about two years ago, where they had an on-premise IT person. That person actually was no longer in the role. I'm not sure if they got fired or if they quit or if kind of combination of both. I'm not exactly sure, but I know we weren't allowed, as a third-party consultant being brought in, we were not allowed to contact this person at all. They were no longer employed, but we were not allowed to contact them even with a question if they were willing to tell us. So I think something happened that wasn't very good. Anyways, they had hired a replacement on-site IT admin, basically. to give a little bit of context, this is an organization of about 110 users, 110 workstations, 110 users. Pretty much all centralized in one building, but they did have a few satellite offices. And they had one IT admin. They had a server room, they had a rack full of servers, and the usual stuff. So we were brought in as outside consultants to see if we could find some efficiencies within the network. Basically, what was happening is they had air conditioning in this room because they had this rack full of servers, but the air conditioning couldn't actually keep up, and it was getting pretty hot. And it seemed, they said things were rebooting themselves. I don't know how they knew that. I didn't experience that myself, but they said things were rebooting themselves, and they asked, is there a way for the new IT admin, because this was a brand new person they hired that had no history, is there a way that we could use this opportunity to consolidate some things, to make things more stable, more reliable, so there's less outages and things like that. So yeah, sure. Okay, so we started documenting, observing, doing our analysis. And what I realized was this IT admin was literally running around all the time, all day long, just doing firefighting tasks. My printer doesn't work. They would get a phone call from a user. My printer doesn't work. I can't access email. I can't save this. Where did this go? Et cetera, right? And look, I will start off by saying there's an element of firefighting in the IT industry, absolutely, right? You will get that panic call from a user. I accidentally hit delete on a file. Can I get it back? And you have to go find the last backup of it, restore the file, and be the hero of the day. That's a firefighting task, right? That is when I say a firefighting task, it's reactive, right? I don't want to say that firefighters, the actual firefighters that fight fires, are completely reactive. They're not. There's a lot of proactive work that goes on these days with fire prevention, which is great, right? But traditionally when you think of firefighters, you think call 911, there's a fire, the fire department shows up, they put the fire out, right? That's traditionally what you think about. That's why I'm using the term. But by no means am I saying that the actual firefighters do not do anything proactive, because yes, they do, right? In a lot of areas, yes, they do. But anyways, so what I found was this IT admin was just being a firefighter all day long, right? Constantly, he was going around dealing with problems. Now, I again, like I said, if somebody accidentally deletes a file, yes, of course, that's a reactive task. It's a firefighting task. You got to go deal with it. But there were things like literally, like every day, there were at least 4 or 5 calls about a printer not working. The printer doesn't work. Why does the printer not work, right? And these are kind of some of the things that we started looking at from the consultant's point of view, from doing assessment and analysis. Is we started looking at, okay, this guy literally gets, this new IT admin literally gets 3 calls a day about this printer right here. What's going on with this printer? So we look at the printer. A, the printer is extremely old. B, the way it's set up is I couldn't understand how this thing was set up. They had it going from, this was an old printer, okay? It was an old big laser printer. And they had it going from a parallel port into, I wish I still had it. I probably have it here somewhere in my office. I'll try and find it for another video. I'll just do another short video if I find it. But they had the parallel port going into an IP adapter. So parallel to IP, and then they had this IP going into power line over Ethernet, and then going into the server room, and then going into the network from there. But then it wasn't actually just going into like a switch, it was going into a hub that then went into a switch. I don't understand. So parallel port to IP to power line over Ethernet, into a hub, into a switch. And they wonder why there were problems with this every day, right? For those of you who don't know what power line over Ethernet is, basically, you can Google it, of course, but basically you get 2 pieces of equipment. They're little rectangular plastic boxes, really, and they have an Ethernet port on them, and they plug into AC power. And what happens is as long as so basically what this is this is for creating an Ethernet connection between 2 locations where you don't have Ethernet already strung, right? So if you're trying to put a piece of equipment in a room that doesn't have Ethernet in the room, but you need to plug this in, you can run a cable, of course, right? But in some cases, if there's drywall everywhere, if it's not drop ceiling, this can be a real pain, right? And it can get pretty expensive. The alternative is if your power grid so as long as both locations, so let's say you have a server room and you have this office that doesn't have any Ethernet drops, right? As long as the office and the server room are both on the same physical breaker panel, so they're connected, the electricity in the wall plugs in either of those rooms is on the same breaker panel. It's not the same breaker, but the same panel, the same service, same electrical service. You can plug in these small plastic boxes into AC power in the office and in the server room, and they both have an Ethernet port. And basically what happens is Ethernet goes into the one, the communication is sent over AC power, so over the AC power wires, it's sent to the electrical box or the breaker panel, then goes to the other, to wherever the other AC outlet is, right? So it goes into one breaker and then goes from one breaker to the other breaker and then goes back out into the server room and back into Ethernet. So basically it's just like a bridge, right? It's a transformation of Ethernet into AC power and then back into Ethernet again. They work really well. I have a few of these deployed in places where it wasn't really possible to string or cable, or would have been extremely expensive. Would I go through concrete or whatever? I've put these in and they are extremely reliable. It's very rare that they have an issue. I even have a D-Link one somewhere. There's not a lot of manufacturers that make these things. TrendNet makes them, D-Link makes them. There is a few others, but like Cisco doesn't make them, so you have to buy one of these more consumer grade ones. But to be honest, they work really great. Even the D-Link one. I mean, I have a D-Link in my own house, and that thing just runs. Like, it's just no problem. It just runs. So you have these things, right? You have these things, and that's one way to bridge, right? But I mean, that's fine if you just have Ethernet on both ends. But then you're throwing in a parallel port to IP, and then you're throwing in a hub on the other end. Why was there a hub? Like, literally, the only thing plugged into this hub was this printer, and then off to the switch. There's nothing else plugged into it. I don't know why I was there. There was room in the switch to just plug it in. But it's one of these things where the IT admin, the old IT admin, obviously dealt with this all the time. The new IT admin was just dealing with this all the time. And I will cut that IT admin, the new one, a little bit of slack, because that person was brand new in the role. They didn't know. They were just trying to deal with the problems, right? They hadn't been there very long, so I'll cut them a little bit of slack. But the point is, the old IT admin, who had been there for a number of years, should have looked at this and gone, okay, I have a problem with this printer every day, a few times every single day. Someone has a problem with this printer. So what do I do with this thing, right? If it were me, I would be looking at it and I would be going, what am I going to do with this thing? And I would, first of all, be trying to find out what's the problem. Is the problem the computers, the workstations? Is the problem the network? Or is the problem this printer? And I would go and I would start looking. I would say, okay, parallel to IP communications is not really ideal. Then I'm going into power line. And then I go back to server and I go, why is there this hub? Right? I mean, maybe there was a reason. Again, I wound up plugging directly into the switch and it wasn't a problem. But maybe there was a reason. But, if you sit there and you think about this, you're going to go, this isn't ideal. And you're probably going to go, look, I'm going to go see my manager. I'm going to go see whoever controls my budget or whatever, right? If that person wasn't in control of it. And I go, look, 3 times a day we have a problem with this printer. Minimum 3 times a day we have a problem with this printer from users, right? Users got to call me. Takes time. Takes my time. Takes users' time. They're not being productive because they're waiting, so they got to print this thing. It takes me 20 minutes to fix it. They're sitting there waiting while I fix it. It's not productive. Honestly, this is an old printer, right? This thing is from 1972 or whatever, right? It's got a parallel port on it. Come on, right? We should replace this thing. I know it's a big laser printer. I know it's going to cost, $2,000 to get a really decent one to replace it, or $1,500 or whatever it is. But you're going to save a number of problems. You're going to save 20 minutes of everybody's time each day who has a problem. You're going to save my time. And, it's going to function better, right? It's going to enhance productivity for everybody, for the organization. Total cost of ownership. Think about this. If I'm spending 2 hours a day fixing this thing every single day, I get paid by the hour. Let's do the math. Over 2 weeks, we've already bought the new printer, right? So this is, again, where total cost of ownership comes into play. That's how you get the budget to replace the printer. But the bigger thing is it's proactive, right? You're looking, if there is an issue that keeps recurring, let's look at and address the issue, right? As opposed to just going every day and hitting reset on this printer or whatever every single day, day in and day out. You go and you hit reset on this printer, restart the print job, right? Reboot the power line over Ethernet, whatever, right? That's being a firefighter. It's not being proactive. You need to be more proactive, right? For those of us in the IT services space, MSP space, there's an expectation of that to some extent from clients, right? There's an expectation that I pay you so my systems are reliable and they just work. Clients understand that problems pop up, right? There's an odd issue here or there, user doesn't know how to do something, whatever, right? Password gets forgotten, has to be reset. They understand that. But if they have a recurring problem, let's say, again, with a printer, every day, 3 different people every day have a problem with this printer, they're going to start asking, well, can you not fix the problem? They're going to assume that there's a problem with the printer, and there may not actually be a single problem. It may be a failure of communication through multiple points, right? Like sometimes maybe the first failure of the day is the parallel to IP. The packets just didn't get created or whatever. There was a communication error. Maybe the second failure of the day is the power line over Ethernet. Just went down, couldn't communicate. Okay, reboot those. Maybe the third failure of the day is the hub, right? So maybe it's not a single point that keeps failing, but the client just knows I can't print. So for them, it's the same problem. Why it's the same problem, they don't care. They really don't care. Users don't care, managers don't care, owners don't care. They just know that there's a problem and it's always the same problem, and can you not deal with the problem? And so that's kind of where, and again, I just see this over and over again, and it frustrates me every time I see it, is technology professionals act like firefighters. They just go and deal with the problems. They don't, after the problem is solved, they don't go back and then go, okay, how can I prevent this problem from happening again? Being proactive, right? That's on the, for example, in this printer example, once the printer is printing again, nobody ever went back and said, okay, how can I stop this printer from having an issue ever again? And quite honestly, in this case, it was replacing the printer, which we wound up doing. And there hasn't been a problem since, right? Again, that was 2 years ago, and there basically hasn't been a problem since. I'm sure it's needed to restart here or there, but in the grand scheme of things, it has had no problems, right? Something else in proactive is again, keeping up with patches, keeping up with updates, having maintenance windows, regular schedule maintenance windows, updating servers, doing these kinds of things, right? It's being proactive prevents problems from occurring. Yes, being proactive costs money. Yes, being proactive takes time, but it is better than being a reactive firefighter, right? Security. I talk a lot about security. My last previous videos generally roll around security because I personally think security is the number one issue. Security on a whole is the number one issue that technology professionals face in the modern day and going into the future, right? There are lots of solutions these days, right? There are lots of solutions for things like file sharing, lots of solutions for email. There's lots of solutions available out there, everything from cloud to on-premise to hybrid. There are so many things you can look at and so many ways you can solve the issues that you have or solve the problems that you need to solve. But it's all about security now, right? Where's your data being kept? Are you monitoring firewalls? That kind of thing. And again, proactive, monitor your firewalls, watch your log files, right? If somebody is hammering your network and trying to penetrate it, identify that, look at the log file, see, I've got an offender that keeps like trying different ports. Let's just block that guy out completely from being able to access anything, even if it's a legitimate service. There, by being proactive and not being a firefighter in that scenario, you have basically locked that guy out. He can't access even legitimate services. You've hopefully prevented yourself from having to be reactive on a security breach if that guy gets in, right? And these are the things, these are really these proactive things you need to be looking at as a technology professional. And like I've said, I've talked to so many professionals, and I've seen so many IT providers that they're just reactive. Their goal is break fix, right? Something breaks, I fix it, right? The whole movement towards managed services is that whole preventative, that whole proactive approach, right? It's not just that I break stuff when it's broken. I will apply the security patches. I will do the software updates. I will do all of this stuff before it becomes a problem, right? And so many people, they don't do that. And it's so frustrating because I mean I've met people who consider themselves excellent technology IT service business owners, and you know, they are technology people. And it's like they're just reactive. They're just break fix people. They just fix stuff when it gets broken. When they get phone calls from their clients, oh, this doesn't work, they go and they fix it and build them. And it's like, okay, that's fine. That's great. You went and fixed it, but where's the proactive approach, right? My opinion, and what I've always done with all of our clients, is a proactive approach, kind of the MSP model. Here in Canada, we don't have that term. MSP is not that big as it is for you guys in the US. Overseas, they kind of don't even know what MSP is. You know, it's still called IT services provider essentially, but we do a lot of that proactive work, right? When I go and meet with clients, I tell them we're proactive, right? I will do disaster recovery tests. I will do penetration tests. I will do these things to make sure that your networks are functioning optimally and like they should. And to be honest, I've gotten very little pushback from clients. To be honest, almost none. They all say, hey, I appreciate that. I would rather pay a little bit of money up front to make sure things are working smoothly and you know, we're doing what we should be doing, as opposed to paying a bunch of money when something's broken and I have a deadline or I can't get something out and I'm stressed out about it. I would rather pay in advance a little bit of money to have you guys look after that, right? And truly, like, that's preventative tasks, things like disaster recovery tests, things like security, doing things on security, that kind of patches, all software updates, all that kind of stuff. To be honest, I would say we probably do more of that than break fix, right? And if we weren't doing it, we'd do more break fix. But again, what's in the best interest of the client and the users, right? And this is what you need to think about. Is it better to be a firefighter and be reactive just on things that break and when there's problems? Or is it better for the organization, for your client, for your employer, whatever? Is it more beneficial to them if you are proactive in doing things and there's less things you have to be reactive about, right? And again, that goes to total cost of ownership. That's the bottom line. I would argue it costs more if there's downtime, because then you're busy, there's cost to you, and there's also cost to other staff who can't do their job and their functions. There's cost to lost sales. Let's say there's, you know, your client's an e-commerce client. If the website is down, people can't buy things. There's lost sales, lost revenue. There's all these things you have to think about, right? A huge one is disaster recovery tests. I mean, that's huge. Do your backups work, right? If you spend, let's say, just hypothetically, I'm not saying this is what we do, but if you spend 20 hours every 3 months testing all your backups, is that, and you make sure that, and you find out that they work or they don't, and then you fix whatever the issue is if they don't, is that better than not doing anything for 3 years, and then all of a sudden you have to pull a 200-hour shift because you find out the backups weren't working and you've got to do some really gnarly data recovery, right? Maybe you've got to send it out to a clean lab. Maybe you have to, do something funky in a Linux environment to try and mount the volume and extract data or stuff like that, right? Or worse yet, it's in a RAID. You don't have a backup. There's a video that I uploaded a few back from this one called RAID Sucks. Check that video out because RAID sucks. And I explain why. But again, maybe the hours kind of add up the same if you were to just do it every few months for 20 hours, or it's 200 hours one time. Maybe the hours wind up being the same, but the total cost of ownership is smaller, because if you're down for, let's say, an entire week or 2 weeks while you're doing this 200-hour stint to recover the data, other people can't do their jobs. I mean, imagine if a company of 1,000 people is down for 2 weeks, can't do anything computer related, because they don't have any of their data. I mean, how many staff is that get paid to just basically sit there and they can't do their jobs, right? I would argue, if you're doing those disaster recovery tests, yes, and maybe it's the same amount of hours, but you know what? When you're doing the 20 hours, every however often it is, you're doing that 20 hours simultaneously. Like you're spending those 20 hours in parallel to all the other staff who are doing their jobs, right? They're doing their jobs. It's not like they're down for the 20 hours while you're doing your test. Then you could argue, would you rather have everybody down for 200 hours at once, or would you rather have people down 20 hours every few weeks or whatever? But the thing is, they're not down. They're still functioning and doing their job and doing everything. You're just spending the 20 hours validating that you do have working backups that you can restore from if need be. So maybe now, by doing those verifications, now if there's a major failure, maybe everybody's down for 5 hours. Okay, and that sucks too. Don't get me wrong. That horribly sucks too. But they're not down for 200 hours, right? And those are the things you really need to think about. And I would argue, as IT professionals in this day and age, in 2016, we should not be firefighters. We just should not be firefighters. That model, that break fix kind of model, that's back from the Windows 95 days. Not that I'm saying people weren't proactive back then. I mean, certainly I'm sure there were some people that were being proactive back then, and those were, again, the good systems administrators of that time. But, honestly, especially in the third-party space, in the IT services provider space, that break-fix model, that's dead, guys. The break-fix model is gone. It's gone. Like, that's just not there anymore. Yeah, like, you really shouldn't be doing that. And I fully... My opinion, my personal opinion, my professional opinion is that if all you're doing is break fix and you're a firefighter, I don't agree with that. I don't think that's good to do. I don't think that's I think that's a poor practice. I very much think that being proactive and doing things, preventative things, is the correct business model. It is the correct technology professional attitude to have, modus operandi, MO. And I would argue, if you're just doing break fix, you really need to think about your approach. Quite frankly, you really need to think about if you want to be in this industry. This industry is not a break fix industry anymore. We're moving away from that. We're moving way away from that, right? Where we're moving into things like dealing with security, dealing with regulatory environments, again, being proactive, data recovery. The more things that we put into a digital medium, the more data we have, the more important data recovery becomes. 20 years ago, if a company lost all their electronic data, it's bad, but can they still operate? In a lot of cases, yes, they can. These days, if a company loses all of their digital data, that company may not survive. It's very, very probable that they won't survive. The exception would be as if they did survive, right? Kind of thing. So, again, this technology industry changes very quickly. These are the things we need to start thinking about. not being a firefighter anymore. And if it's something that you don't want to do or you're not interested in, is your place in this industry anymore, right? That's what I would argue, and that's what I would say we should think about. So yeah, that is it for this video. If you guys have any questions, there's an email address at the bottom of each of these videos. If you guys have a question or you guys want me to talk about something specifically, I have gotten a few emails from people who have asked me to talk about very specific things. But if you have something you want to talk to me about, or you want to have me talk about, let me know. I have no problem talking about anything that you guys are interested in. That is why I'm here. Whoops. Seem to have lost my my earpiece there. So for those of you who haven't been watching me too much, I use this earpiece now because the audio quality is much better. Let me make sure this thing's still plugged in. It is. Okay. The audio quality is much better than just using, again, I use my smartphone, my BlackBerry Priv, to do these videos. And the the microphone of the phone itself is not very good for videos, especially in this particular room. So I use a headset. The audio seems much better on the headset. So anyways, yeah, if you have something you want me to talk about, again, that's why I'm here. That's why I do these videos. I try to share my experiences. I try to share my professional opinion with everybody. I enjoy sharing what I know. So yeah, let me know. Send me an email. Let me know. And yeah, I will try and chat about it. So I will see you guys next time.